Inner light. Esoteric wisdom for the soul's ascent is devoted to mapping that yearning, a longing that has haunted humanity across centuries and civilizations. In the pages that follow, we journey deep into the shadowed heart of antiquity to unravel the secrets of the Orphic mysteries, reincarnation and initiation in ancient Greece. This is no simple tale of ancient rituals. Instead, it's a descent into the labyrinthine worlds beneath the surface, a confrontation with the terror and hope that shaped Orphic belief. We'll explore how initiates sought release from the endless cycle of rebirth through ritual purification and sacred knowledge, and how their encounters with chthonic deities, symbolic descents and transformative ordeals pointed the way to the soul's liberation and divine ascent. As we delve into the mysteries, prepare to uncover the darkest fears and brightest hopes of the ancient world. A journey from suffering to transcendence, from oblivion to memory, and from death to rebirth. Whispers beneath the earth. Beneath the sunlit temples and bustling agora of ancient Greece, there lingered a world untouched by daylight, a world of shadows, miasma, and unspoken terror. In the silence beneath the earth, the Orphic mysteries whispered promises and threats to those daring enough to seek them. To the uninitiated, life was a brief flicker before the vast, unknowable night. To the Orphic initiate, every heartbeat echoed with the dread of eternal recurrence, the horror of being trapped, soul after soul, in the tomb of flesh. The Orphic mysteries were not the gentle assurances of the Olympians, nor the comforting rituals of civic religion. They were the secrets traded in darkness, the songs sung in blood, the rites that demanded descent into the black underbelly of existence. They offered no certainty, only the possibility that, through suffering and revelation, one might escape the endless cycle of rebirth, the terror of memory lost, and the agony of the underworld. Here, in the flickering candlelight of subterranean chambers, initiates faced horrors both real and imagined. They confronted the ancient crime that had doomed humanity to suffer, the sin inherited from the Titans, the blood of Dionysus spilt upon the earth. They gazed into the abyss, not for comfort, but for the chance to learn the passwords that would let them pass unscathed through the jaws of death. This is the tale of the Orphic mysteries, a journey into the heart of ancient horror, where the dead speak and the living tremble, and where the only hope is to break the chains of fate through knowledge, suffering, and the agony of rebirth. The birth of Orphism, blood, shadows, and song. To understand the Orphic mysteries, one must begin, not in temples, but in the darkness of myth, where blood flows, shadows writhe, and the first notes of a song echo through the broken silence. Orphism was born from trauma, from the primordial wound that split divinity and humanity. The legend of Orpheus is not a gentle tale of music and love, but a saga of descent, dismemberment, and terror. Orpheus, whose voice could charm stones and beasts, was no ordinary mortal. Son of the muse Calliope, and some whispered Apollo himself. He walked the earth, knowing secrets forbidden to most. But it was Eurydice's death that plunged him past the threshold of the living. With lyre in hand, Orpheus descended into Hades, his song weaving through the endless night, trembling before the throne of Persephone and Hades. His failure, the backward glance that doomed Eurydice anew, became a lesson in mortal frailty. Even the greatest cannot defy the laws of the underworld unscathed. Yet Orphism is not simply the cult of a grieving lover. It is a doctrine carved from the bones of myth, its origins soaked in violence. The most horrifying myth, the slaughter of Dionysus Zagreus, echoes through Orphic texts. The infant Dionysus, son of Persephone and Zeus, was torn to pieces by the Titans, devoured in a frenzy of blood and flame. The Titans, punished and annihilated by Zeus, left behind their ashes from which humanity was formed. Thus, every human was born with the guilt of primordial violence, a fragment of the divine, stained by the crime of the Titans. Orphic poetry, written in cryptic fragments and chanted in secret, did not shy from these horrors. Orpheus's own death was a mirror of Dionysus's agony, torn limb from limb by the Maenads, punished for his refusal to honor all gods equally. His severed head, drifting down the river Hebrus, continued to sing, an eternal reminder that truth and suffering cannot be silenced. The birth of Orphism was thus a birth through blood and loss, a tradition haunted by the memory of divine dismemberment. Its rites were not celebrations, but reckonings. Its songs, not mere melodies, but incantations against oblivion. The initiate entered the Orphic path not to escape horror, but to confront it, to learn that only through suffering and sacred knowledge could one hope to escape the endless cycle of pain. The Chthonic Pantheon, gods of darkness and memory. In the Orphic vision, the world above, the bright domain of the Olympians, was but a fleeting stage. True power, true fate, dwelled below in the suffocating depths of the earth. Here, the Chthonic gods reigned, deities of darkness, death, and memory, whose names were spoken in trembling voices and whose influence stretched into every breath of mortal existence. Hades, lord of the underworld, was no mere jailer of the dead. He was the embodiment of inevitability, the cold monarch at the heart of every Orphic rite. His realm, shadowed and silent, was the destination of all souls, the place where memories were stripped from the living and identities dissolved in the river Lethe's waters. To face Hades was to confront the ultimate horror, not annihilation, but endless, inescapable recurrence. Beside him sat Persephone, the dread queen, whose annual ascent brought fleeting hope, and whose descent marked the return of death's dominion. Orphic hymns beseeched her as the Pure One, the Awful One, Mother of the Dead. Her compassion could grant souls a measure of release, but her favor was fickle and her mysteries deep. In the Orphic imagination, Persephone was both victim and ruler, torn from the world of light, yet wielding supreme authority over the destinies of those who dared descend. Most terrifying, perhaps, was the figure of Dionysus, not as the jubilant god of wine, but as Zagreus, the infant torn apart, the god who died and lived again. Dionysus, Zagreus embodied perpetual suffering, the divine spark trapped in cycles of death and rebirth. In Orphic rites, Dionysus was invoked as the savior, yet his story was a warning. Divinity itself could be ripped asunder, forced to endure pain beyond imagination. There were others too, lurking in the Orphic cosmos. Demeter, the grieving mother, presided over the Eleusinian fields and the secret grain of death. Hypnos, god of sleep, brushed mortal eyes with forgetfulness, while Thanatos, the silent winged harbinger, waited at the threshold of every life. Even the rivers, Lethe and Mnemosyne, became deities, their waters offering either oblivion or memory, and with them hope or despair. The Chthonic Pantheon was a family of shadows and wounds, each god an axis around which the horrors of existence spun. Their worship was not simple veneration, but a negotiation. Pleas for mercy, offerings of blood, desperate bargains for the chance to remember, to escape, to ascend. To know them was to understand that death was never merely an end, but a passage fraught with peril, where the soul might wander lost for eternity, or through secret knowledge, find the way home. Cosmogony and Catastrophe, the divine crime. In the beginning, according to the Orphic Cosmogony, the world was not born in light, but in darkness and chaos. The primordial gods did not smile down upon creation. They wrestled, devoured, and destroyed, leaving behind a universe drenched in dread and guilt. The Orphic account of creation is a story of catastrophe, a mythic landscape where every birth is haunted by a crime, and every soul is a fugitive from divine wrath. From the earliest whispers, Chronos, time itself emerged from the void, twisting eternity into form. Out of Chronos came Phans, the Shining One, a hermaphroditic being who erupted from the cosmic egg. Phanes, radiant and monstrous, was the source of all life and all terror, the light that exposed every secret and shadow. His reign was brief. The succession of gods was a cycle of violence, each generation supplanting the last through betrayal and bloodshed. Yet the Orphic catastrophe reached its apex in the story of Dionysus Zagreus. Zeus, Lord of Thunder, begat Dionysus upon Persephone, daughter of the depths. The child, radiant and uncanny, was destined to inherit the cosmos, but the Titans, ancient enemies of order, lured Dionysus with mirrored toys, then set upon him with knives. They tore him apart, devoured his flesh, and laughed as his divine blood soaked the earth. Zeus, enraged, unleashed his vengeance. The Titans were incinerated, consumed by fire, and from their ashes, humanity was formed. Here lies the Orphic horror. Every person is a hybrid of the divine and the damned. In each human heart burns a fragment of Dionysus, but also the guilt and violence of the Titans. Every soul carries a legacy of murder, a stain that cannot be washed away by ordinary rites. This original sin, the divine crime, became the foundation of Orphic theology. Life was a punishment. The soul, once pure, was locked in the prison of flesh, condemned to wander the world in confusion and longing. The endless cycle of reincarnation was not a gift, but a sentence. Each rebirth a reminder of the ancient transgression. Orphic hymns do not soften this horror. The world, they insist, is ruled by necessity, Ananke, and fate, Moira, powers older than the gods themselves. Mortals are trapped in a cosmic labyrinth, hunted by the memory of Dionysus's agony, pursued by the shadows of their Titan ancestry. Yet within this catastrophe Orphism offered a glimmer of hope. Through secret rites and sacred knowledge, the initiate might break the cycle, purify the soul, and return to the divine source. But the path was perilous, the journey marked by suffering, terror, and the ever-present threat of forgetting, of losing oneself in the abyss forever, of flesh and sin, the human condition in Orphic thought. To the Orphic initiate, existence was not a gift, but a curse, a sentence to be endured. The world of flesh, with its appetites and desires, was a prison constructed from the ashes of the Titans, an echo chamber of primordial crime. Human beings walked the earth as haunted hybrids, their souls shimmering with the stolen spark of Dionysus, but weighed down by the ancient guilt of their Titan inheritance. This was the central terror of Orphic anthropology. The soul, psyche, was immortal and divine, yet it found itself shackled inside a mortal body, soma, a vessel of corruption, suffering, and forgetfulness. Life itself was a form of exile, a wandering far from the lost homeland of the gods. Every pleasure, every pain, every fleeting joy was a reminder of distance and loss. The Orphics saw the body as a tomb, sama, a wordplay that fused soma, body, with sema, grave. To be born was to be entombed, to begin a cycle of suffering and forgetting that would last for countless lifetimes. The flesh was a cage, its walls smeared with the blood of Dionysus and the crimes of the Titans. Hunger, lust, and rage were not merely human flaws. They were the residue of the Titans' violence, replaying itself in every generation. No ordinary ritual could cleanse such a stain. The Olympian sacrifices, the public festivals, the offerings on bright altars, all were powerless against the deeper horror. The Orphic texts spoke instead of purification, catharsis, a slow, agonizing process of shedding Titan nature and awakening the hidden god within. This required more than abstinence and prayer. It demanded a lifelong struggle against the self, a battle with the shadows lurking in the soul. The fear was not merely of death, but of what followed. The endless cycle of reincarnation, metempsychosis, the soul cast from body to body, animal to human, human to beast, again and again, each life a stage in the punishment for primordial guilt. Forgetfulness was the soul's greatest enemy. To drink from the river, Lethe was to lose all memory of the divine, to become trapped, wandering in ignorance forever. For the Orphics, only through sacred knowledge, gnosis, and ritual could one hope to escape. The initiate clung to the hope that by remembering the true self, by recognizing the divine spark within, one might break free from the cycle and ascend at last to the realm of the blessed. But the path was fraught with peril. Sin was not only an act, but a state, a condition inherited at birth, a shadow that followed one from life to life. Only those who dared to descend into the depths of their own darkness, who confronted their horror at the heart of the self, could hope to find the way out. Reincarnation, the endless cycle of suffering. In the Orphic universe, death was never an escape. Instead, it was a threshold, one of many, endlessly repeated, opening onto a corridor of suffering and uncertainty. The soul, divine yet damaged, was condemned to wander. Reincarnation, metempsychosis, was not a hopeful return, but a horror an interminable procession through flesh, fur, and feather, each life a penance for ancestral sin. The Orphic myths told of souls passing into the bodies of animals, insects, and humans, each transformation a direct result of one's deeds and failings, a cosmic justice more pitiless than any mortal law. To be reborn as a beast was not merely misfortune, it was a sign of spiritual failure, a deepening descent into ignorance and bestiality. The initiate shuddered at the thought of returning as a serpent, a dog, or a vulture, driven by instincts, deprived of the memory of divinity, gnawed by uncontrollable desires. But even rebirth as a human brought little comfort. Each new body was a new prison, and each life a fresh opportunity to forget. The soul, battered by the trauma of previous deaths, entered each existence in a haze of confusion and longing, grasping faintly at the memory of its divine origin, only to be swept away by the river Lethe's deadly current. The Orphic texts warned, "Beware the waters of Lethe, for in their depths your essence may dissolve, and you will wander, lost in the labyrinth of flesh for eternity." This cycle, anarchiklosis, was the ultimate horror, a mechanism of divine retribution set in motion by the Titan's crime. It was not merely the fate of the wicked, but the default condition of all souls. The world was a great wheel, grinding lives beneath it, propelled by necessity and guilt. The Orphics did not promise easy comfort. The journey of the soul was fraught with peril at every stage. In the moment of death, the soul stood at a crossroads, threatened by oblivion or the torments of Tartarus. In the world of the living, it struggled against the pull of the body, the seductions of pleasure and power, the constant threat of spiritual amnesia. Between lives, it wandered in the twilight, seeking the path to the next incarnation, haunted by the memory of suffering, driven by a longing for home. In rare moments, the initiate might glimpse the way out, a sliver of hope in the gloom. Through ritual, knowledge, and the favor of the Chthonic gods, it was possible to break the cycle, to achieve liberation, lysis, and ascend to the company of the blessed. But for most, the wheel turned inexorably, dragging them through lifetimes of agony, forgetfulness, and regret. Thus, the Orphic doctrine of reincarnation was not a gentle circle, but a spiral into terror, a mythic machinery grinding the soul against the stone of fate, until through suffering and sacred knowledge, it could at last be freed. Initiation, descent into madness and death. To enter the Orphic mysteries was to step willingly into the jaws of darkness. Initiation was no gentle awakening. It was a plunge, violent, bewildering, and suffused with dread into the secret terrors that haunted the soul. The candidate was not simply educated, but unmade, stripped of identity, dragged to the edge of madness and death. The rites began with purification, but not the simple washing of hands or the burning of incense. Orphic purification was a ritual ordeal designed to break the chains of Titan flesh. The initiate fasted, abstained from meat and beans, shunned bloodshed, and lived in spectral isolation. It was a slow stripping away of earthly comfort, a preparation for the descent that followed. Then came the descent, the symbolic catabasis into the underworld. Some mysteries were enacted in caves, tombs or subterranean chambers, their walls echoing with the murmurs of the dead and the living. The air was thick with smoke and fear. The initiate was blindfolded, led through darkness and forced to confront the possibility of annihilation. Chants and hymns filled the gloom, invoking Hades, Persephone, and Dionysus Zagreus, gods who could grant release or deepen torment. The Orphic texts hint at visions and terrors. One might see the faces of the Titans twisted with rage, or hear the screams of Dionysus as he was torn to pieces. In these moments, the initiate teetered on the brink of madness, struggling to hold on to the thread of memory. The horror was not only of death, but of dissolution. The fear that one's soul would shatter, forgotten and lost in the abyss. The climax of initiation was a symbolic death. The candidate was made to lie among bones or within a mock grave, their body covered with shrouds. In the darkness, the initiate confronted the twin specters of Lethe and Mnemosyne, forgetfulness and memory. They were asked passwords, sacred phrases inscribed upon golden tablets, which would allow them to pass unharmed through the gates of the underworld. But not all survived unscathed. Ancient sources speak of initiates who lost their minds, who wandered in delirium, gripped by visions too terrible to bear. The Orphic path was not for the faint-hearted. It demanded a willingness to face the horror at the heart of existence, to risk madness for the hope of liberation. After the ordeal came rebirth, a return to the world of the living, changed and marked by what had been endured. The initiate emerged, cleansed but haunted, bearing the secret knowledge that could free the soul from endless suffering. They were now twice born, touched by death, armed against oblivion, yet the terror lingered. The memory of descent, the taste of death, the echo of madness, these remained, shadowing the rest of life. The Orphic initiate lived in two worlds, one foot in the realm of the living, the other forever in the haunted corridors of the Underworld. Underworld journeys, terror in the kingdom of Hades. The Underworld of Orphic belief was not a place of gentle shadows, but a realm of unending dread, a kingdom ruled by terror, memory, and inexorable law. The journey through Hades was the heart of the Orphic drama, a passage fraught with peril, where every step was haunted by the ghosts of crime and the threat of annihilation. Upon death, the soul was flung from its mortal shell, trembling and dazed. The initiate knew more than most. They had prepared for this descent, armed with hymns, passwords, and the sacred instructions etched onto thin gold tablets. But nothing could fully shield them from the horror that awaited. The soul's first challenge was the crossing of the Stygian rivers, Acheron, Cocytus, Phlegethon, and especially Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. To drink from Lethe was to lose all memory of the divine, all hope of liberation. Orphic tablets recovered from ancient graves pleaded, "Do not drink from Lethe. Seek instead the waters of Mnemosyne, the river of memory." The threat was existential. A single mistake condemned the soul to wander, lost in ignorance for lifetime after lifetime. Next came the judgment of the dead. Before the grim tribunal of Hades and Persephone, the soul was weighed, not for ordinary sins, but for its depth of knowledge and purity. The shades of the Titans writhed in torment nearby, their agony a reminder of the punishment awaiting those who failed. The initiate recited passwords, secret names, and ritual formulas, phrases learned in darkness, repeated in terror, to prove their worth and claim their passage. The underworld was filled with horrors, fields of the uninitiated where souls wept in confusion, pits of Tartarus where the wicked were flayed by monstrous beings, and the pale meadows of Asphodel where the forgotten lingered in eternal twilight. The initiate's path was narrow and treacherous. At every turn, spectral guardians demanded the right words, the correct gestures. A misstep meant endless suffering, a plunge into the deepest night. Yet, for the worthy, there were signs and guides, psychopompic spirits, perhaps even Orpheus himself, leading the way through gloom. The gold tablets instructed, "Say, I am a child of earth and starry heaven, but my race is of heaven alone. I am parched with thirst. Give me to drink from the ever-flowing spring of Mnemosyne." To speak these words was to claim one's divine heritage, to remember and be remembered. At the end of the journey, the soul stood before the gates of the blessed, the Elysian fields, a realm of light beyond the reach of ordinary mortals. The initiate who survived the horrors of Hades might ascend, released from the cycle of rebirth, restored to the company of the gods. But for most, the journey ended in terror, a return to the wheel, another lifetime of pain, another descent into the haunted corridors of the underworld. The Orphic vision of the afterlife was not comfort, but confrontation. It demanded that the soul face its deepest fears, its most ancient crimes, and through knowledge and ordeal, find the way to freedom. In the kingdom of Hades, terror was the crucible, and memory the only hope. Purification and pain, rituals of release. The promise of Orphism was not mere knowledge, but escape, a liberation bought with suffering and sealed by ritual. Yet the path to release was lined with pain. Purification, catharsis, demanded not only obedience, but endurance. The initiate's flesh and spirit were tested, broken, and remade in ceremonies that echoed the agony of the gods. The first law of Orphic life was abstention. The initiate renounced the pleasures of the body. Meat, beans, wine, and sex were avoided, not for morality's sake, but to weaken the grip of Titan nature. Hunger gnawed, desire burned, and every denied craving was a small sacrifice, a ritual reenactment of the primordial crime. Through deprivation, the soul learned to distinguish its own voice from the whispers of the flesh. But abstention alone was not enough. The Orphic purifications were elaborate, sometimes violent. Water and fire played central roles. The initiate bathed repeatedly, sometimes in rivers said to flow from the underworld itself, their chill biting the skin. Smoke from burning herbs and incense filled the air, masking the scent of mortality. Sacrifices were offered, but these were not bloody. A curious horror lay in the bloodlessness, a sense that the rites were meant to cleanse a stain too deep for physical blood to touch. Chants and hymns were recited in darkness, voices trembling with fear and hope. The words invoked Persephone and Dionysus, pleading for mercy, for remembrance, for the chance to escape the wheel of suffering. The hymns themselves were cryptic, filled with references to death, dismemberment, and the endless cycle, each phrase a reminder that pain was the price of freedom. Sometimes the purification became a communal ordeal. Initiates gathered in the night, fasting, shrouded in veils, their faces gaunt and haunted by visions. Together they enacted the mythic descent, reliving the tearing apart of Dionysus, the fall of man, the agony of rebirth. Tears flowed freely, and madness simmered just beneath the surface. Gold tablets, inscribed with secret instructions, were prepared for burial with the initiate. These fragile artifacts were the final tool, the passwords to memory, the map through the underworld. To possess such a tablet was both comfort and terror. It meant one's soul had been marked, set apart, destined for judgment. Through all this suffering, the initiate was transformed. Pain became a form of power, a way to burn away the Titan's shadow and awaken the Dionysian spark. The hope of Orphism was not that suffering would end, but that it would be made meaningful. Each ritual, each deprivation, each moment of agony was a step toward release. Yet the horror lingered. The threat of purification was that it might fail, that the soul might be weighed and found wanting, condemned to another round of torment. For every initiate who ascended, countless others remained trapped, their tears lost in the rivers of Lethe, their cries unheard in the darkness below. In Orphism, purification was never easy, never safe. It was a journey through pain, demanded by the gods and paid for with bloodless suffering. A ritual that promised freedom only to those who could endure the terror at its heart. Gold tablets and ghostly instructions. In the darkness of ancient tombs, archaeologists have unearthed fragile slivers of gold, tablets inscribed with cryptic words curled around the bones of the dead. These Orphic Gold Tablets, lamellae, shimmer with mystery, their surfaces etched with the last hope of terrified souls. They are both passport and prayer, a guide for the journey through the haunted corridors of Hades. It was not enough in Orphism to live a life of abstention and pain. One needed knowledge, secret instructions, precise and unerring, to navigate the terrors of the underworld. The gold tablets were the talismans of the initiated, prepared with trembling hands, hidden in the mouth, clenched in the fist, or sewn into the burial shroud. Some were small as a thumbnail, others large enough to cover the heart. All bore the same silent promise. You are not alone. You have been prepared. The instructions on these tablets were chilling, direct, and formulaic. Words to be spoken at the thresholds of death. Passwords to be uttered in the presence of the Chthonic judges. I am a child of earth and of starry heaven, but my race is of heaven alone, the soul would declare. I am parched with thirst, and I perish. Give me to drink from the ever-flowing spring of Mnemosyne. These phrases were not mere poetry, they were survival itself. To forget even one was to risk damnation, to be cast among the shades of the uninitiated, to wander eternally in the fields of Oblivion. The tablets also offered terrifying warnings. Do not approach the pool on the left, they cautioned, referring to Lethe, river of forgetfulness. Approach instead the pool on the right, the the spring of memory. The soul, battered by the trauma of death, must resist the overwhelming urge to forget, to surrender to the soft oblivion of Lethe's waters. Only memory, painful, burning, and clear, could guarantee passage to the realm of the blessed. The very existence of these tablets is an admission of cosmic terror. The Orphic initiate knew that the afterlife was no peaceful slumber, but a gauntlet of trials and terrifying interrogations. Ghostly wardens, monstrous in form, demanded credentials. The soul's only defense was the knowledge gained in life, now pressed into the fragile gold that would outlast flesh and bone. In the flickering candlelight of the burial chamber, the final ritual was performed. The gold tablet was pressed to the lips of the dead, a last kiss, an invocation against silence. The living wept, fearful for the soul's journey, hoping that the words would be remembered, that the instructions would be heeded. For the initiate, death was not the end, but the beginning of the most dangerous quest, one for which only Orphic wisdom, inscribed in gold, could offer hope. Yet even in these ghostly instructions, there lingered uncertainty. The journey was perilous, the outcome never assured. The underworld was vast, filled with false paths and spectral deceivers. A mispronounced word, a forgotten line, a slip into Lethe, and it was all lost. The Orphic Gold Tablets are thus the physical embodiment of hope and horror, a testament to the desperate longing for salvation amid the terrors of death. They are the whispers of the dead to the living. Remember, do not forget, there is a path out of the darkness, if only you can hold on to memory, liberation, or oblivion. The final judgment. After the ordeal of descent, after the recitation of passwords and the desperate clutching of memory, the Orphic soul arrives at the heart of terror, the final judgment. Here, in the deepest reaches of the underworld, the initiate stands before the dread tribunal, Hades and Persephone enthroned in silence, the air thick with the screams of the damned and the whispers of the hopeful. The Orphic vision of judgment is not a straightforward reckoning of moral deeds, but a trial of knowledge, memory, and spiritual purity. The soul, trembling and exposed, must prove it remembers its lineage, its suffering, and its quest for liberation. The gold tablet is both shield and sword. The words inscribed upon it must be spoken with conviction, for they are the only defense against oblivion. The judges are merciless. Hades, inscrutable and cold, gazes upon each soul with eyes as dark as eternity. Persephone, both compassionate and terrible, weighs the soul's suffering against its wisdom. All around, the shades of the uninitiated moan, their memories erased, their identities dissolved into the grey mist of Lethe. The terror is complete. To fail here is not to be punished, but to be forgotten, to dissipate into nothing, to lose the self forever. For those who succeed, the reward is extraordinary but sobering. The soul, having endured pain, madness, and the terrors of the underworld, is granted liberation, not merely release from suffering, but ascent into the realm of the divine. The cycle of reincarnation is shattered, the wheel broken. The initiate's soul rises to the Elysian fields or the company of the gods, restored at last to its lost homeland. Yet even in liberation, there is unease. The Orphic texts hint at trials yet to come. Mysteries within mysteries, the soul is changed, marked by its ordeal, forever aware of the abyss from which it has escaped. It is a victory bought with suffering, a peace haunted by memory. The initiate's ascent is not a forgetting, but a remembering, a final affirmation of the horror endured and the wisdom gained. For the countless souls who fail, the judgment is a return to the wheel. Cast back into the cycle, they are reborn in new flesh, their memories erased, their suffering renewed. The underworld closes upon them, and the terror begins again. Each life is another chance, another risk, another trial in the unending labyrinth of existence. The Orphic final judgment is thus the culmination of fear and hope. A moment when everything is at stake, when oblivion and liberation hang in the balance. It is the true heart of the mysteries, a reckoning from which only the bravest, the wisest, and the most haunted may emerge free. Legacy of shadows. Orphism beyond Greece. Even as the rites of Orphism faded from the living world, their shadows stretched far beyond the borders of ancient Greece. The agony, hope, and terror at the heart of the Orphic mysteries did not vanish. They seeped into the bones of later philosophies, religions, and secret traditions, whispering their warnings and promises to generations yet unborn. Philosophers such as Pythagoras and Plato drank deeply from Orphic springs. In their teachings, the soul was immortal, forever cycling through bodies and realms, forever haunted by the possibility of release or damnation. Plato's myths of the afterlife, the judgment of souls, the rivers of memory and forgetting are inflected with Orphic dread. His vision of the philosopher's journey is not only a path to wisdom, but an echo of the initiate's perilous descent and ascent. Orphic ideas did not die with Greece, they mutated, infecting the spiritual bloodstream of the Roman Empire. Mystery cults flourished, Bacchic, Eleusinian, even Hermetic, each one a mirror or a distortion of Orphic terror and hope. The promise of secret knowledge, the ordeal of ritual suffering, the dream of liberation from the body. All these found new forms in the haunted chambers of Roman religion. In the shadowy corridors of Gnosticism, Orphic themes were reborn. The world was seen as a prison, matter as a curse, and salvation as a secret path revealed to the few. The agony of the soul's exile, the risk of oblivion, the necessity of gnosis, all these are Orphic legacies reanimated in new myths and new rituals. Even in Christianity's dawn, the echoes persisted. The idea of original sin, of salvation through suffering, of the soul's journey from death to resurrection, these bear the fingerprints of Orphic horror and hope. The catacombs of Rome echoed with hymns and prayers that, in their darkness and yearning, recalled the ancient mysteries of Orpheus. The legacy of Orphism is not merely doctrinal, it is existential. Its vision of the world as a haunted labyrinth, its insistence on the necessity of suffering and memory, its promise of liberation bought at a terrible price, all these have shaped the spiritual imagination of the West. The gold tablets, buried with the dead, are more than relics. They are symbols of the human condition. of the terror and longing that drive us to seek meaning in the face of death. In modern times, the Orphic mysteries linger in art, literature, and the occult. Poets and thinkers invoke Orpheus as the archetype of the seeker, the doomed lover, the bearer of forbidden knowledge. Jung spoke of catabasis, the descent into the unconscious, as a necessary ordeal for transformation, a psychological echo of Orphic initiation. Occultists and esotericists trace lines of power and suffering from the caves of Eleusis to the secret societies of today. Yet for all these legacies, the core of Orphism remains a warning and a hope, a testament to the horror beneath the surface of existence and to the possibility of release. Its shadows stretch across millennia, reminding us that the journey through darkness is not only a thing of the past, but an ongoing ordeal, etched into the soul of humanity. The echo of the underworld in modern thought. The Orphic mysteries, though buried beneath centuries of dust and dogma, continue to resonate through the marrow of modern thought. Their echoes pulse in the nightmares of philosophers, the visions of poets, the rituals of secret societies, and the existential anxieties of ordinary souls who grapple with the meaning of suffering, memory, and death. Today we walk in the bright light of reason, yet the underworld remains, lurking just beneath the veneer of certainty. Our fears of oblivion, our hunger for transcendence, our desperate hope that pain might be redeemed, all these are Orphic at their core. We may no longer chant hymns to Persephone in the dark, nor swallow gold tablets before burial, but the terror and longing that animated the ancient initiates persist in new forms. Modern psychology, with its language of descent and transformation, mirrors the Orphic journey. Jung's catabasis, the plunge into the unconscious, is a contemporary echo of the initiate's descent into Hades. The ordeal of confronting one's shadow, of facing repressed trauma and ancestral guilt, is a ritual as old as Orphism, a confrontation with the abyss that promises but never guarantees rebirth. Our literature is haunted by Orpheus. Poets invoke his name when they write of lost love, of journeys into darkness, of the fragile hope that song and memory can retrieve what has been taken by death. Musicians and artists echo his lyre, seeking to charm the monsters of the mind, to bring order to chaos, to find meaning in pain. Even in science and philosophy, the questions persist. What is the nature of consciousness? Is the self immortal or doomed to oblivion? Can memory survive death, or is it doomed to dissolve in the waters of Lethe? The search for answers is itself an Orphic quest, a journey through the unknown, fraught with peril and haunted by the threat of forgetting. Occult traditions, both ancient and modern, carry the Orphic torch. Secret societies, mystical orders, and esoteric schools preserve the rituals of purification, the symbolism of descent and ascent, the promise of hidden knowledge that can free the soul. The gold tablets have become metaphors, keys to the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of reality. Yet perhaps the deepest echo of Orphism is existential, the recognition that suffering and death are integral to the human condition, and that liberation, if it comes, must be earned through ordeal, memory, and transformation. The horror of the underworld is not only a mythic landscape, but a psychological and spiritual reality, one that each person must confront in their own way. In the end, the Orphic mysteries invite us to remember, to hold fast, to memory in the face of lethe, to seek meaning in suffering, and to hope for liberation, not as a gift, but as the hard-won prize of a journey through terror. The Underworld is never far away. Its shadows linger, whispering the ancient challenge: do not forget, do not surrender to Oblivion. There is a path out of the darkness if you dare to endure. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Orphic mysteries, its horrors, hopes, and the soul's quest for liberation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us bring more esoteric wisdom, ancient mysteries, and transformative journeys to those who, like you, seek the inner light. Stay tuned for more journeys into the unknown. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and share.